All right. Oh, it's breakfast time for you, Santa. All right, then. Have a good breakfast. I want to discuss... Oh, that was not lewd, says Deagle. Thank you, Sansfire. It's funny. That tin can matched the falling bit perfectly. And with that, Sansfire takes the lead and is the bit leader. Very good, Deagle. Nice battle, Santa. All right. For those of you who maybe have never played D&D before and you wonder, well, how do people make maps? How do you create societies and worlds and villages and cities? And oh my gosh, it's so much information. It can be. But we're going to go through a method that it's going to help you out greatly. And for this, I highly suggest getting the Dungeon Master's Guide if you want to start doing some serious world building. Dark Wolf, that is true. Anything is lewd if you think hard enough about it. There is a section here in the DMG that specifically goes over some ideas for settlements. Questions to ask yourself. What's the purpose of it? Even if you just want to call it an adventure hub or the starting area. Right? A village, a settlement, a place where people spend their time, money, and effort to build houses, businesses. What does it do in your world? You know, not everything has to be, oh, this is the great Library of Alexander, you know, style metropolis. Or even just a singular temple. That's a civilization unto itself. You can have, hey, Spillheart, you can have a farming village. And you know what? That's what they do. But you need to think about it as a DM. Why does this thing exist in your world? Because your players will probably want to know. Oh, what's this village do? And even if it's a simple farming. Oh, okay, gotcha. People need food. I get it. That is correct, Fluffy. Many cities were about a day's travel apart. Well, Spillheart, we are making a map. And so we've switched gears from being player characters in the player's handbook. And now we're going to put on our DM caps. And we're going to be dungeon masters. How big is your settlement? Who lives there? What does it look, smell, and sound like? And you're like, smell? Do any of you live in the countryside? When they put manure down to fertilize the fields? Do any of you live in a big city when the garbage hasn't been taken out because of a strike or something? Have you ever been to, I don't know, a fair, a county fair, and everything smells like cotton candy and corn dogs and elephant ears and deep fried Twinkies, things like that? You know, is it a market day? Do you hear pigs and chickens and other livestock being traded or slaughtered? Do you live by the seaside? And some blind girl is just going around town, you know, shouting, oysters, clams, and cockles. Oysters, clams, and cockles. Well, think about the atmosphere a little bit. Just stop and take a moment. And even if it sounds weird to you or silly, your players don't know. And your players are receiving what you're giving them. And their brains are going to be working it out. Dark Wolf is kind of geeking out because she hasn't had her RP fix. Cookie, I smell it all the time. Oh, you live near a lot of farms? Yep. So you know when they're putting manure out in their fields. That lasts for a while, doesn't it? I want to talk about a smelly type of field we found where I'm from, but translated it sounds very wrong. Look, Santa, you're talking about it in context of what we're discussing. If you want to share it, that's fine. Yeah. Oh, had to miss Maid too. I hope your Maid RPG game is going well. Well, there's Santa. There is a plant, and it produces a legitimate. It's the rape flower, and it produces rape seed, and we use that I believe for food, and I think even some maybe some industrial processes. They have a horrendous stench. Well, I don't know if it's translated from the plant, but don't forget too, especially in our modern world, your local water treatment facility that filters out all the poo and pee and other garbage in the water that gets flushed down toilets removes that gunk from the water, right? So we get good water back to our houses. And what they do is they spread all the waste out in a field to let it dry, and then they sell that as manure to farmers. Well, I mean, that's what the plant does, Ivalon. It was canola. I thought canola oil was corn oil. Ah, okay. Hey, you learned something new then. Any advice for homebrewing a race? Be careful in how you do it because power creep can be a thing, Spillheart. And as well, I would try and base it off of one of the existing races currently, especially out of the PHB, and go from there. See if you can reskin a current race in some other way. Who governs it? Who else holds power? Just because you have something like a colonial governor, or you have, I don't know, it's just a country bumpkin mayor, you know, of a little village of like 300 people. There is someone who holds the legal power in the village. But let's face it, especially in a farming village, just because someone got elected mayor doesn't mean that like the two or three heads of the major farming households can't go to the mayor and tell the mayor what to do. Oh, you have a huge canola field by your house. So apparently Sandsfire can confirm. Does it have defenses? Does it need them? Where do characters go to find goods and services? What's the economy like? The Dungeon Master's Guide will help you, will prompt you to think. Let's make a point in the universe. Even if it's a little backwards farming village. Or a small city. It does well for itself. Not super busy. Not super quiet. It's in between. That's kind of where I live. Sandusky is it's a city. It's an hour to Cleveland, an hour to Toledo. So we don't have to worry about the big city stuff. But we can go to the big city if we want to see a concert or do some extra big shopping. Right in between the two. It's really nice. Yep, this is world building stuff, Spillheart. Yep, Fluffy. What are its government? What about temples or other organizations, secular or religious? So by going through these pages here in the DMG, look, this is on page 15. This is right up front. Open it up, and the world is at your fingertips as a DM in this book. I suggest picking this up, read through it. You don't have to go cover to cover, but especially if you find yourself in a jam and you say, I have to build a campaign setting, I have to build a world, I have to build a town. How do I do that? Well, I mean, we'll give you a distilled version here, but definitely you're going to get an expanded version right up here in this book. Maybe Dark Wolf. We'll see. We're going to do a little bit of random terrain generation. So, size villages, towns, cities, and you could go bigger. You know, to metropolises or, you know, big cities or something like that. It gives some suggestions. Governments, defenses, commerce, and whatnot. So if you just want to drop a city and quickly fill in some the blanks, boom. Here it is for you, ready to go. I'm sorry, Spillheart. I got to have my own dinner. Atmosphere is filled with a bunch of beggars, whatnot. And yes, what type of government do we have? And you know what? Here is a handy dandy random government generation table. So if you don't know, or you don't know a lot of different government styles, roll a percentile. Well, Sansfire, if you just want to play D&D, the player's handbook, that's 90% of the game. The DMG and Monster Manual are the other two of the core 3 rule books. If you get the DMG, you might as well pick up the Monster Manual too, because that'll help with a lot of the back-end planning of the game. A lot of rules and variants, things to consider. They'll help you randomly, if you want random, generate dungeons and worlds and things like that. So first and foremost, Sansfire, the player's handbook. Then if you decide to run, the DMG and Monster Manual. After that, probably Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Alright, so as you can see, we are going to generate a town or a settlement, and the region around it as well. Let's roll a percentile and find out what kind of government it has. 84. It's a plutocracy. What does that mean? Well, it just so happens, alphabetically listed. Society is governed by the wealthy. The elite form a ruling council, purchase representation at the court of a figurehead monarch, or rule by default because money is the true power in the realm. Many cities in the Forgotten Realms campaign setting, including Waterdeep and Baldur's Gate, are plutocracies. So, he who has the gold makes the rules. Hey, Kraken! Hello, fellow mortal. To you as well. We are all mortals here doing mortal things. Clearly, no one here is immortal. Why, that would be silly. Ha 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 ha. All right. So plutocracy. Monetarists are ruling the town. Oh, you're new to D&D in general. Well, Kraken, we are just getting Kraken on, not as a player, but as a DM. How do you go about doing some world building? How do you make a setting? In this case, a city. So if you have questions about D&D, whether it's directly related to what we're doing up here or not, please ask. This is a newcomer-friendly stream. This is D&D 101. We are the bread and butter. The B&B of D&D. Hey, how about that, huh? And so if you're not sure what something is or does, ask. And if you have an idea at a prompt, because I love interacting with you all out there, just because you're new doesn't mean you can't have input on things. And so you can offer suggestions too. All right, so congratulations. Much like how we build a random character, we're building a random character that's a town. And we're starting out by determining, okay, it's a plutocracy. Money rules. Yep, Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes is a good one too. And if we really wanted to, here's a sample hierarchy of noble titles. If you do want to have some kind of monarchy, though, if you go with a theocracy, you could replace this with different ranks of orders, or if it's run by knights. Think like the Knights of Solamnia in Dragonlance. How the order has different ranks and they run the affairs of the city. Think about commerce. What's traded? Now, will your players ask all these questions or even care? Not necessarily. But can you at least give a one-sentence explanation if they say, oh, so what goes on here? Oh, well, they trade grain. They trade grain for paper. And then what do they do with the paper? Maybe there's a monastery in town. So the paper ends up there and they copy books. All of a sudden, you're following a supply chain. And you might not have ever taken a business class. Just think about it logically. Start somewhere, anywhere on the chain, and you'll end up anywhere else on the chain. You can think about currency. I mean, there's a lot of defaults, a lot of, gold, copper, silver. Languages and dialects. This part of the DMG has a ton of information for you. I'm not going to go over all of it in detail, but if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer it. Hey, Paisy. Paisy says, I've been thinking about something tangentially related to all this. With the popularity of streaming roleplay/D&D, I've come across a growing number of people who want to know enough to watch, but are resistant to learn the quote-unquote really complicated game. Every time I explain it, I get better at cutting in the core of what a viewer needs, rather than a player or a DM. Well, Paisy, if that turns into advice for this channel, or if that's content that you want to stream for yourself, please do so. Because I want as many of you out there playing and enjoying D&D and other role-playing games. World of Darkness, Dark Heresy, Eclipse Phase, All Flesh Must Be Eaten, Golden Sky Stories. There's so many of them out there. Tactical Waifu. I guess it's the AKA the other way around. Lasers and Feelings. Most cities grow up where different terrain types intersect. That's where trade has to change vehicles, say from wagon to ship. Fluffy, that only happens in Settlers of Catan. Kraken says, as a point of reference, I've played like 4 sessions, which we have to restart, I think, because of schedules. And I've watched all of Crit Role Season 2. I'm way too lazy to watch Season 1, so I'll probably miss some jokes. I have not watched Critical Role, so I couldn't even join in on any of the jokes, Season 1 or 2. How do you change your payment options on Twitch? Offhand, Spillheart? I think it might be in your dashboard. Oh, apparently Santa's Blah has played some Dark Heresy and likes it. You've been running a Dark Heresy 2 campaign for 2 years. My first character died 2 weeks ago. Broke my heart. Oh. You need tactical waifu? Done. Hey, Cake Boss. One second. These aren't showing up too well, unfortunately. Well, I'll tell you what. If you would like tactical waifu, lasers and feelings and so forth, we could provide that to you over on the Discord. Tactical Waifu is a role-playing game with a 1-page rule document for both storyteller, like the presenter, and the players. Critical Role especially is bringing in a different crowd, and in some ways I'm part of that crowd, and I find it interesting to think about how to approach that player as compared to what I traditionally think of as a fan of fantasy. Fluffy Sheep says Critical Role is a fantastic show, but it's a little atypical for a D&D game. For one, everyone is an actor. You don't usually have or need that level of acting ability. But 2, they tend to be a very fluff-oriented game. Most games have a lot more combat and a lot less horsing around. That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, other things to consider, magic in your world, etc. and so forth. I'm not going to worry about that. We're going to continue on with getting to a little bit of the minutia of building a settlement, okay? Yeah, multiverses. I personally, no time travel, no parallel worlds, like no parallel universes or a multiverse. I'm a one universe kind of person. Building villains and adventures, building dungeons. You know, we're getting there. Alternate rules, how to make random encounter charts. All sorts of good stuff is in here. I'm telling you. Okay, here we go. Monuments. Oh, I did have it correct the first time. I thought it was feature. So it should be Monument 1 and 2. All right, anyway. Hey, Risky Luke, good to see you. I'm thankful of Critical Role, if only they bring up the standards. Also, Sansfire won in the battle against the Kobold Mage. Can an admin or can a mod give Sansfire 75 EXP? Opening up nerdy culture to people has always been a pickle. You have to have emphasis on what's objectively great about role-playing games. Yeah, it requires a I guess, a careful presentation. You got to appeal to the normies. Do we have a place for the settlement to go? I'd like to approach this with the context of places around it. Not necessarily, Paisy. You'll see how I approach it, which is probably different than you or anyone else. But we can build from this point if you wish. All right. Let's determine the terrain in which this locale is set. Kind of as Fluffy Sheep said, there's going to be at least 2 different types of terrains around. What are they going to be? Well, how do you randomly determine terrain? Oh, my friends, I will show you. For you see, rangers and druids have abilities that have been broken down into terrains. If you come over, especially here to druids, it will go over those 8 terrains, as one of the druid circles will give you special spells based on it. And so what we'll do is we will roll 2d8, and we're going to find out where this place is located. What are the 2 major terrain features? 3 and 3. All right, well, let's re-roll at least one of these and hopefully get something other than a 3. 3 and 7. 1, 2. So a desert and a swamp. Ooh, interesting. Okay. So those are going to be the predominant landscapes around this settlement. Oh, you just got the PHB? Awesome, Fire. Okay. Yeah, we didn't get a double desert, but we... you wanted a double swamp, but we did get a double desert that has a desert that has a swamp in it. And you say, all right, how does that work? A desert is an extremely arid place with little rainfall. How are we going to have a swamp in a desert? Well, it's possible, and we'll get there. This is also a good challenge for us to think. So let's make some guidelines for ourselves. And then we will load up MS Paint and we'll professionally do a map. Hey Buffy, the swamp needs lava. That would be an interesting swamp, wouldn't it? Maybe underground. I think lava would make it about 300% hotter. Now, personally, I like to give my terrain distinct features beyond just it's a desert or a swamp. And fortunately for us, the DMG has a couple different ways to add some spice. Beyond the natural terrain, what is something that's either supernatural or man-made that you can use as landmarks? So let's start here. This should be Monument 1 and 2. I wrote it out correctly, and I second-guessed myself. All right, we're going to take a D20, and we're going to roll it twice. 1 and 9. Okay, so there's some kind of sealed burial mound or pyramid. And 9 is an intact statue of a person or deity. Scrolling down, We have a weird locale. Something maybe supernatural or distinct. We're going to roll 1d20. 8. Battlefield. Where lingering fog occasionally assumes humanoid forms. Okay. Hey, Journeyman, good to see you. We made our third random character of the night, and he's a very interesting guy. Hopefully they all are, right? And now we've taken off our PC hat and we've put on our DM cap, and we're going over how to build a world, step by step, without getting lost or in a panic, or say, I know nothing of socioeconomics and geology. Go with me on this. Desert Oasis is actually a swamp, and the swamp is the city. The city presses up against the edge of the swamp, and people have to prepare for the desert when they leave the city. That works, Paisy, and you know, we actually made a city a lot like that earlier on. And I'm not saying that we can't reproduce that. I think we certainly can. So I like that idea, and I think it can work, because great minds are going to think alike here. Will you post the map creation on YouTube or on demand? Santa, yes. This will be saved as a VOD as part of tonight's broadcast, and this particular segment will be posted up on YouTube later. Pure Hawk. Yes, this is in the DMG with the exception of us randomly generating 2 terrains to give consideration to our area that we're producing. That was out of the player's handbook, and all we did was roll a d8 twice, and we found out which of the standard 8 terrains that are shared by druids and rangers. Spillheart, hey, thank you. You've noticed us. Thank you, Spillheart, for noticing us. Oh my gosh. Oh, and a tier 3 sub? Oh my gosh, dude, thank you. And so now here's our challenge, right? We rolled randomly, and the terrain in which this settlement exists has a desert and a swamp. Oh, and how do you square that circle, right? Pure Hawk, thank you. Run! Follow me if you want to live. Well, Paisy, that is an option if we go back up here. One is a sealed burial mound, and the other is a plundered burial mound. Now, that, you know, does that mean that we are, like, hard and fast just married to the fact it has to be a sealed one? Not necessarily. We're using it as a thought or a prompt. That's what we're going to discover together, Fluffy. We're going to make it happen. All right, Cookie. Take care. Thank you for being a part of things. Kraken, thank you also. Run! Sounds like Florida? Yeah, hey. And remember, quicksand is swampy desert itself. Right? Quicksand. All right, let's continue down. We have our weird locale. And now, what is the race relations of the people who live here? Let's roll a d20 and find out. 18. The racial minority are refugees. Dominic, thank you. And I see there Dominic and Joaquin, right? Did I get that correct? Thank you all for the YouTube subscription. And now let's figure out who the major and the minor races are in this settlement. We're going to do it just like we do with random character creation. Let's roll a d10. In fact, let's roll 2 of them. 3 and 2. If we come back over to our guide, race number 3 is halfling, and race number 2 are elves. So 3, the halflings, are the majority. Now, if you want to be extra specific, we can do the odds and evens again. So we could go, if we want to go here, we can go, I don't know, we'll roll the d10, and for each of them, we'll determine. Both of them are odd. So that would mean stout halflings rule over wood elves. Or if you wanted to do something like, I don't know, you go 1, 2, 3, 4 is high, 5, 6, 7, 8 is wood, and then you go maybe, I don't know, 9 is something, and then 10 is drow, because there's maybe a minority chance that perhaps there are drow. You know, come up with something that you think makes sense if you want to subject yourself to randomness. So, the wood elves are refugees from something and somewhere, coming to live in this stout halfling majority area. That doesn't mean that we won't find humans and tieflings and dragonborn. They're there. We're just talking about the predominant races that live in this town. A hidden halfling village, by the way, Tommy. It's good to see you again. Okay. Now, we know that this place is set up by he who has the gold makes the rules. It's going to make it really tough for the refugees, by the way, I'd imagine, especially wood elves. Let's determine now the status of the ruler. And we're going to roll a d20 for that. 5. Respected, fair, and just. So, yes, the people who have money make the rules, though the ruler is respected, fair, and just. So maybe is providing some kind of aid or, you know, does something along those lines to actually rule well over these people. Does the swamp exist magically? Maybe. We can make it happen naturally in some way, I'm sure. The intact statue is producing a magic field that causes a swamp to exist in a set radius, which leads me to think of a quest of why is the statue making a swamp and not something more habitable. Perhaps you break into the sealed pyramid and figure out what's wrong with the statue. That's a very good adventure prompt, Paisy. Santa, yes, there are multiple types of deserts. Yeah, Pi. Maybe that's where they get their moisture. Is from fog and not really rainfall. By lizard folk, bullywugs, or Floridians. Make sure you tell King that one, Fluffy Sheep. But a good ruler isn't always a good person. That is true, Spillheart. That is true. Maybe they're caring for the refugees. You know, we could say, well, how long have they been refugees? Did they just arrive? Or have they been there for years and years now? All right. What is a notable trait about the city that we're developing? Again, let's roll a d20 and find out. 12. It is the center of trade for a specific good. What do they grow here? Well, clearly, if you want a swamp and a desert, we look at the Nile Delta. And the Nile Delta grew a plant called the mallow plant that so happens to grow in marshes. And therefore, our stout halflings must clearly be trading marshmallows. You think mushrooms? Mushrooms can work too, Paisy. Hidden halfling village in a drought. An elven sage came to bring water to the land, and somehow the sunken ziggurat warped the magic and turned a part of the desert into a moist and hellish swamp. Paisy seems to like that idea. Everything that isn't a building is mushroom. The roof is mushrooms. Kraken seems to like the idea. Marshmallows is too good. So, I mean, it could be mushrooms, it could be wines, it could be marshmallows, it could be papyrus, like, right? Paper. It could be meats or gems. Maybe because they're in a desert and there's abundant sand, maybe the conditions are right that they actually have a glass, like their center for glass work. I don't know. It could be what we want it to be. But we know that whatever it is, this is the center of trade for a specific good. Their central trade could be a pun. It could. Now, this city is known for its 16. High fashion. Mushroom wine, favored by the small folk, but one of the few things toxic to dwarves. Maybe they're allergic. And lastly, what is the current calamity facing this place? Something's got to go wrong. Every city, I don't care if you live in small town, wherever you are, the standard phrase is small town USA, but not all of you are from there. If you're from a small town, I guarantee you, you have a problem in your town. What's everyone gossiping about? If you go to your local, your city council meeting, what's the problem going on? The problems have changed, but the fact that cities have ongoing problems, even in today's world, is still something that occurs. Well, now we add in a whole fantasy layer, and let's find out what is troubling this city that we are manufacturing. D20. Another 16. There is internal strife that leads to anarchy. Could this be that the elves are demanding representation in the government? Could this be actually that there are several factions of halflings that are each lining up behind their probably literal patron, the person who's holding their purse strings, and we're getting some kind of factional fighting, and maybe the elves aren't even involved. Maybe the elves are just cheap labor. I don't know. Think about it that way. What kind of internal strife would a place like this have? Maybe, I don't know, maybe the mushrooms have all dried up. That was their core crop. And instead, all these dumb mallow shoots are just going up everywhere. No one can eat those. Hey, what do you even do with mallow? That's dumb. Something, it could be something along those lines. It could be a pun, a joke, or something serious. Depending on how you as the DM want to run your game, you will have that ability to draw the line where you'd like. A line in the sand even. Oh wait, they make the purple dye from the mushrooms and they sell it to the rich people in the big cities. That brings a certain amount of money to the city and the small fashion industry. Too many refugees cause internal strife pretty much just by existence. Yeah? I mean, look, the world's facing a lot of that right now, Fluffy. Poisonous marshmallows? Says Kraken. The refugees are rising up, you think? If the climate is generated magically, it's pretty obvious what could be wrong there. Pi says high fashion, maybe the main crop is flax for linen, and they export fine cloth and linen clothes. That's true, or maybe there's, we could even introduce maybe silks. Maybe there's a rare kind of bug that only lives in this very peculiar environment. You know, either like a silkworm or a spider or something along those lines. And so maybe they can actually make silks or cotton, right? Egyptian cotton is a thing. Sorry if I've missed some messages here. Merchant on merchant violence. That's right. It's anarchy in the streets, Paisy. Trade focus strife. In my idea, they are making purple dye. Okay. Kraken. All right. So congratulations. Now, if we really want to have minutia on our map, look. Random buildings, a residence, is it religious? Here's a tavern name generator. You know, so if we want to say, oh, the tavern in town is known as the 20 and 10. The Gleaming Demon. The Gleaming Demon is the tavern in town. It's the hot spot. It's where everyone goes. It's the Adventurers Guild. It's whatever. There you go. You can start really getting minutia in here. Look, warehouses, shops, random urban encounters. So if you're walking through the town, you're not necessarily going to walk into a monster, but you could get run into some bullies. There could be a corpse. It doesn't even have to be an undead. You find a corpse. Whoa, what just happened? And are you going to get caught up in something legal? So yeah, this goes into mapping a settlement and really just getting into it. The DMG has so much to offer you. Kraken, you like the Gleaming Demon? Here, we'll make a note then. There you go. Now that we have this as a guideline, why don't we try mapping this out? I mean, you guys can do this at home too. I'm only using MS Paint and a regular mouse. I don't have a Wacom tablet. I don't have any formal training. I have a little bit of knowledge on how the world works, and where I don't know how it works, we can use some plot putty and suddenly something's magical. Or it just is. No one knows how it works. Yet here it is. What I love about the 5e DMG, says Paisy, is that none of this is actually 5e specific. Sections of it are, but most of it's the super useful DM things. Yeah, it's very universal. Gleaming Demon has a tiefling bartender, and he's really the only tiefling in town. That could very well be Dark Wolf. You see how you're starting to now just imagine more about this town, and now we're generating NPCs, and this is our map. This is the map of the town, and look how much we've already conceptualized things. All right, so let's look at a couple scenarios. We know that swamps are lowlands that get flooded. Like that is a very basic definition of a swamp, right? It has to be low so the water like flows into it. The Gleaming Demon is a building-sized elemental corrupting tired workers. Or what if it's just a big old mimic? Kraken says, does the pyramid have to be hidden? I mean, it could be sealed by magic. Nothing is saying it's necessarily hidden. It's just saying it's a sealed burial mound or pyramid. The inn used to be called something like the Gleaming Dragon, but when the Tiefling took over, someone nailed Eamon over the Ragan. See, there you go, Paisy. We're creating a great story and a great setting. Alright, so if we know that swamps, by their nature, are places of usually poor drainage, and that sit low, next to a source of water of some kind, we can do this. We're going to have purple, kind of like a violet, be our color. And let's give it some personality here. Just kind of wiggle. Look, tap into your inner Bob Ross. There's no mistakes. What, are your players going to judge you on a random map that they had no idea existed until you put it in front of them? If they are, you might want to reconsider your friends. We'll give it a little innie here. And we'll give it a little outie. There we go. Make this nice and easy to read. Now, surrounding this lowland area, which, I don't know, it could be rock or something along those lines. Maybe it is kind of a flat, rocky area, or even it's exposed rocks that just kind of slide down. In fact, you know what we're kind of looking at here? What if this is a crater of some kind? Either a really big sinkhole, or what if something crashed here and made a big crater? Or volcanic activity occurred. It doesn't have to be like a meteor or something. We'll have this kind of bulge out a little bit. Bulge, bulge, bulge. And so now, as we have this kind of lip or ridge of some kind, maybe there's some raised areas of not necessarily mountain. I don't want to call it mountain. But this actually rises up above the lip of the crater. And maybe it shields some sand. Maybe, I don't know. It's just some rocks that were displaced. There, maybe we'll actually have kind of a big ridge right over here. Kind of like sticks out a little bit into the desert. And it creates maybe even a little bit of a cove. Wouldn't that be something? And then we'll give some little plops over here. Plop down some rocks. Why not? Couple other little scattered, like really big boulders that are hills themselves or something. Do you need a scale to this map at all? No, not at all. I mean, I don't think I'm answering a question. I'm kind of blindly just putting this out here. Just tell a story. Let your hand go. Just let your hand work. All right, now we're getting to the point that it's going to get really yellow. Kind of like my shirt. So, if you have sensitive eyes, here it comes. Bink. Yeah, Sandsfire could be an old dry seabed. Starspawn lair laying dormant under the city. Yeah, ooh, wouldn't that be a fun adventure quest too? Kind of like an inverse plateau. The pyramid could be a tribute to a long-forgotten god that cursed the land around it. Hey, that's a great idea, Sans. Oh, your baby rage. You're gonna go grab a pencil and a sketchbook? Okay, Kraken. A space pyramid. So, congratulations. Here's our terrain, right? Here's the desert all around. Here's some kind of a crater or low-lying area, and water in some form or fashion is accumulating here. Yeah, a lich could, or a mummy lord of some kind. A mind flayer lich. All right, now that we have this, we have a low-lying area, and we've already filled it in with swamp water, which we're presuming is fresh. I mean, what makes it a swamp? It's really just a lack of drainage. It doesn't have to be all gross and yucky and filled with leeches and whatever. It could still be fresh water. It's more stagnant. There's not a lot of good drainage going on. And maybe it's not draining because instead of sand, which obviously the water filters through, it's actually sitting on just a big slab of rock. And the rock could either be sticking up or out of the desert, or it could be sunk down, you know. Here, let me draw it in profile here. So what if there's a plateau here, and actually the swamp is inside the plateau, like this? Or we have the swamp, and then, or we have sort of like sea level or sand level, and then the swamp is located down in there like that. However, you think the Lich could be an apostle to one of these ancient gods, Sandsfire? Yeah. Oh, like the Salt Lake Desert. A god who was once a lich, perhaps, wink wink. What if the swamp part I super could in the desert is normal desert temps? Oh, what if the swamp is super cold? Yeah, or if you want it the other way around, we can have a super cold desert, and because of the biodegradation and whatnot in the swamp, it could be producing heat like a mulch pile does or a compost pile. We could inverse it too. Think as well in Undead Brigham Young. That'd make for an interesting revisionist history. We need to decide in any case, how are we getting our water? Now, in Oases is an underground spring. And so there's an underground river passing through somewhere, and a part of it has ruptured up to form an oasis. Or, if we go with the idea that was postulated earlier about the desert that gets the most of its moisture through a fog. Okay, let's think about, how does fog act? I mean, a fog is a cloud at ground level. And you need that hot and cold interaction. Almost kind of like what Kraken is talking about here. It could be the reason for... so Kraken was talking about temperature differences, right? What if something is causing this slab of rock, this crater of rock, to be really cold and condense any of the air around it? And then, of course, it pools down to the bottom. No, Kraken spitballing is fine. Throw out ideas. Let's think. What's the worst that happens? We're awesome and creative people. Oh, no. The horror. Yep, the swamp could be from an aquifer as well, Pi. So we could have just direct water. We could have fog rolling in, and something is cold, and we could relate it to the pyramid. Maybe something in the pyramid makes this slab of rock really cold, and so it condenses any water vapor. And so really the swamp might have a couple feet of water, but the swamp might actually be completely navigable by the halflings themselves. Because a lot of it is just moisture, it'll evaporate off, or people just consume it or whatever. But it could almost be like a cranberry marsh It's only a couple feet deep. And you know, and then they use the marsh to harvest whatever they're growing there. Or what if the swamp is really just moist sand that is getting fertilized by plants growing and dying and intermixing with the sand? But really, what if the waters of the marsh are nothing more than just almost like a permanent fog or a permanent ground cloud? Or is there a source not coming up from below? What if there's a source coming down from above? What if there's a phenomenon somewhere, some way, somehow, magical, or we can conceive naturally, where you're getting almost like a waterfall of mist or something, or there's a wind that blows clouds down out of the sky. And so there's always a cool misty breeze that passes through and condenses and like coagulates in pools in the bottom of this rock basin to form a swamp. So really, the desert is barren itself. And if you really want to go the spooky route in Aurora Borealis, if you really want to go the spooky route of, you know, something that could cause cold, and maybe something that can even, like, suck in the clouds from the sky. What if you had something like this? So here's our pyramid. The pyramid is emitting whatever these, like, cold vibes are in the basin. The focus of the pyramid, something reaches up, and here we have some nice, like, white fluffy clouds, like, yay, oh, wonderful. Something is pulling, is like grabbing and pulling the clouds down to impact the top of the pyramid, which is chilled. It instantly condenses the water from the water vapor in the clouds. And so down this ziggurat or this pyramid, it's almost like a reverse fountain. The water doesn't come up from the fountain. This fountain pulls the water down. And so the water travels in ripples, in cold ripples, down the side. And so now we have this pyramid that's maybe somewhere in the middle of this swamp that's continually pulling moisture. And you know what? If this was a seabed at some point in time, or you know what? You might even, if you want to be a DM and dangle clues in front of your PCs, maybe at some point in time, where they're at was a verdant forest. But something happened. Whatever's inside that pyramid has been continually pulling the moisture out of the atmosphere for so long that the entire, like, you know, for miles around, it just became so dry because every drop of water vapor is pulled, screaming through the sand, through the air. It's pulled to the temple. And so maybe, you know, I think we had, who was it? Spillhard? No, it was Paisley, I think, wanted to know the region around it. Let's take that next step. Let's look in the margin. What if this desert is surrounded by completely fertile fields and forests? Or is located, you know, like somewhat next to a giant lake or the ocean for a little bit of, you know, extra water vapor. And it makes no sense. How is a desert existing in this region, in this climate, in this part of the world? Yet here it is, and it's expansive. Maybe this pyramid is to blame. This pyramid has pulled every ounce of water vapor to create this area. And for what purpose? Sorry, I got on a soapbox here. The Atacama Desert in Chile is right by the ocean, but there's a big altitude discontinuity, and the wind always blows out to sea. You know, it's like that too when I was in Lima, Peru. You know, because that's all desert too, along the coast. Paisley, I'm using paint to make a random map of the city streets and buildings. I'm not sure if it'll turn into anything, but it's fun. Yeah, Paisley, hey, whip up a detailed map of the city, because I won't do a detailed map there. And if you want to share it on Discord, plop it down in character art or something. Sansfire, maybe the burial mound contains the remains of a powerful ice dragon, and that's what's causing the cold. Hey, okay. That'd be a great twist. You need to destroy that in the pyramid, but if you do, yeah, you might... That would completely screw up the very fragile, unique ecosystem. Why wouldn't it be a swamp kraken? An angry djinn screwing up the climate? Yeah. Sand says, maybe it's not the pyramid at all. Maybe it's a spine of an ancient creature that crashed down and caused a crater. Yeah, hey, look, if we want to tie this to our characters, what did we just make? A great old one patron. There's got to be a great old one around somewhere who wants to make a deal. Eh? Alexander, I read your mind, but I didn't understand how to write it here. Well, I'm glad that it resonated. I'm glad it resonated with you, Alexander. And you know what, Kraken? That can be a moral conundrum, right? Your PCs arrive on the scene. It's a beautiful, exotic locale. It's weird, right? You have this desert that's in or you have this swamp that's in a desert. Yet it's really cool and misty while the desert is super dry and hot. And, you know, how is the pyramid generating this water? Because maybe at this point in time, unless like a cloud is actually like sucked out of the sky, maybe like, you know, it kind of comes and goes, like a rainy season. Like sometimes the pyramid just like floods water down. Other times it just trickles down. Well, what if the PCs end up on some sort of adventure where they realize that these people, whether they know it or not, have been having to feed this entity, this pyramid, something or someone. And you know what? You have this respected individual who maybe isn't so respected because he makes the hard decisions. He is a public face of being just and fair. But behind the scenes, he's the one who perhaps has to choose through a lottery or by sacrificing criminals or something along those lines. He decides who gets fed to the pyramid so that everyone else who lives here can eat, can live, can trade. Maybe because this place can only grow certain fabrics, certain plants to make fabrics. Everything is dependent on the sacrifices. Everything is dependent on this. And then you shove your party. I mean, I don't mean like in a forceful way. Your party now has to face a moral conundrum. Do we expose this? Do we threaten it and perhaps destabilize this town and even the region, as this is a linchpin of fashion and commerce and mushrooms and marshmallows? Mushmallows? Mushrooms? Whatever. Cotton? Flax? Or maybe they compromise their morals a little bit and say, well, I guess it's okay if you're feeding criminals. So what did that guy do? No, did he murder someone? You know, did he commit some kind of sexual assault? Oh, no, he just didn't pay his taxes on time. Ooh. Really? Really? Well, yeah, I mean, we don't have murderers. We're not monsters, but still, criminals are the first ones to go. And suddenly you start looking at what the definition of a criminal is. In my opinion, moral encounters, moral conundrums are the best last boss of your D&D campaign. You can have a cool villain that wears a neat helmet that lights up and makes his voice sound all weird. That's fine. To me, having your PCs maybe twist a little bit in the wind at a moral decision, if you can pull it off, that's fun. especially when they sit down and they speak as their characters. And some might argue for it, some might argue against it. Zuler, yeah, we can make a road. Oh, Kraken, you're thinking more of an empathize with the secret man? Half drowlings. Santa. So yeah, Zuler, what we could end up doing here for that is we'll take this, and we can. I mean, depending on what Paisley's doing, if we wanted to do like a quick sketch, we could even say, all right, so this city exists. This city exists in or above the swamp, which actually we made another city that was like this. It was above an effervescent swamp because there was a portal to the plane of air underneath it, and so the entire swamp was fizzy because it was actively being aerated and carbonated or whatever. And so it always produced like this kind of foul-smelling mist because the bottom of the swamp was always churning with bubbles. And it made for like rapid decomposition of dead things, which included people. And that was a criminal-based campaign. It was like a crime-based campaign that we made. The city name was Teonice, Teonice, and when we made the campaign for it, the pun related, because campaigns that have puns are something near and dear to me, because it was a crime-based story, we called it the Teonice racket, the tennis racket. Anyway, yeah, it was kind of like a soda pop swamp. It was constantly being aerated, and so all of the water was fizzy. Like, you put your hand in it, and all the little bubbles would be forming and start going up over it. You've been running the idea of something like Venice, but lower down. Low wood bridge, a couple inches above the swamp. Something like that could work, Paisley, very much. And so if we did that, what you might have is some kind of a highway. Right? It might come in from over here. Goes in. There's probably some sort of like an initial gate or fortress that we can fill in here. Then we go back and actually, I don't know. So there's just kind of like city blocks or I don't know, weird shapes because this is just how it happened. If you think I'm destroying this, that's fine. But you're going to get the idea of... You're going to get the idea of what we're doing here. So yeah, so there's these platforms. People live above the swamp. It's great for waste disposal, and it's good for getting fresh water. And there's a network of bridges. Oh, that light gray and light purple's not going to work. Anyway, you get what I'm saying here. So here's the natural map, and then we can overlay some kind of a city map atop it. What if he has to make a sacrifice? Otherwise, the entity would destroy the entire village. That would add another level of moral problems. Yeah. Who gets sacrificed? In fact, you might even have the leader say, I'm willing to sacrifice myself, but then who's next after me? The beast must be fed, whatever the beast is. So character 3, the sailor, could be a gondolier as in Venice. Exactly, Zuler Pie. Sure, we can work in our characters that way very much. And you know what? Because this is a trade hub, it's going to attract a lot of business opportunities. And therefore, we have two charlatans, especially ones that are trying to prey on people's religions, right? As clerics. We have a mysterious religious artifact in the swamp. Cults, things like that. Has our map been able to perfectly represent the 3 completely randomly generated characters we've made so far? And P.S. don't forget, this was effectively a randomly generated map too. Does anybody mind if I just, like, say things? Like, Kraken, if you want to have a stream of thought, you're welcome to do so. Yeah, brainstorming is best storming. If you're in a brainstorming session, the best thing you can do is not only grab a pad of paper, do not use a pencil. Always use a pen. Because you might come up with some dumb sounding stuff initially, but you can go back and say, I can't use that here, but I sure as heck can use it elsewhere. That was a great idea in another context. When you're brainstorming, use pen. Now, as we've gone over the methodology, we've gone over some brainstorming with you all. Do any of you have some kind of a nickname? Well, not even a nickname. What would you like to call this place? And, you know, if you don't even want to just say the city itself, there's a couple names that we can actually throw out there, right? So, like, there's the name, but we have the desert, the swamp, the city, the pyramid, because that's a major feature. The region. Oh yeah, I'm saving this whole place and putting it in my world. This is giving me like 5 sessions of content. Yes! Excellent! I'm so glad, Paisy. I'm so glad. Santa, you gotta get ready for work. Thanks again for the amazing entertainment. Yep, alright. Thank you very much. Have an awesome day yourself, Santa. Sans, if any of you out there want to use this content, you are welcome to do so. This isn't my content. I'm not putting a trademark on it. This is something we're building together. You want the region Gumbolia because it's like a Louisiana. So look, Pi, are they growing okra here? Come on, be real. Are they growing okra and rice? You can tell me. It's cool. Sansfire, what would you like to apply that name to? I think something where the monster is scared, and that's why it's so cold. Yeah, in fact, they could even get in there, and everyone's like, oh, we feed it sacrifices. And meanwhile, well, I don't know, what if it's just an innocent little thing in there? Shrek Swamp says hollow. Well, thank you for throwing something out there. Yeah, deep fried okra, Tommy. Oh my gosh, good stuff. Dark Wolf, you're welcome to steal Mesomasca for later. You want to call... Alright, so you want to call the swamp itself the Tarnished Jewel of Atzwaddle? We can, but that's... If you're living there and you're talking about your surroundings, would you always refer to the swamp as the Tarnished Jewel of Atzwaddle? Maybe. Maybe, Dark Wolf. These are ideas that I think we can definitely bring up on Saturday when we plot the campaign around this place. How do you work canon D&D character like Vecna into a homebrew? It's Especially Vecna. He's the god of secrets. You can work him into anything you want. He just exists and does what he does. Hollow, thank you. Run. Follow me if you want to live. Thank you very much, Hollow. Yeah, you just inform your players that this is your pantheon and this is how it functions. You'd probably have a short name for it, just like call it Atzawaddle. Now, if we go with the idea that the pyramid is the object that's sucking the moisture out of everything to pool and condense it, like especially clouds, what if the pyramid was called something like Cloud Point? Or Sky Drain. Sometimes obvious names are given to things as well. But I'd like to work their lore in as well, their canon lore. Well, look, Spillheart, if none of your players are playing a Cleric of Vecna themselves, you don't have to give away everything. In fact, a lot of times revealing content in the course of the campaign is a good idea too. I mean, you can say that, yes, there are some deities out there that exist that are secretive, no one really knows that much about them, and then you can reveal it over time, because your players are only going to be able to remember, in all honesty, this is not said to offend you or anyone else who runs D&D, your players can only know, remember, or care about so much. And especially if you're the DM and you know everything that's going on already, you can lose track of just how much information someone who doesn't know this stuff can retain. Does Atzawaddle have oxalotls in the water? Wouldn't that be something, right? You get a bunch of little shrimpies, or not salamanders, not guppies. Why am I forgetting the name of the species? It could be something like that. Oh, they are salamanders? Okay. It could be something like that. Although, if it's, oh, is it maybe newts? Yeah, mud puppies, hellbenders, and, I don't know, mudfish? Just permanently juveniles. Okay. Though if the point of, if the pyramid itself is some sort of at least quasi-religious fixture in some way, I'm not saying that Nimbus Snatcher or Cloud Sipper are bad, but is there a way that you could instill a sense of greatness, awe, or reverence in with the name? Oh, maybe I was thinking, yeah, like newts, but also I might have been thinking geckos, and that wasn't the same thing. Not at all. Spillheart, I'm getting an image of this town being like the Lady of the Lake town in Avatar: The Last Airbender. The Nose of the Great One. So that could be a formal, respectful, long title. Geckos are basically permanent land salamanders. Okay. Hey, we're getting a good biology lesson, aren't we? Thank you, Kraken. We're throwing out names for the pyramid. I need a name for the pyramid, the city, and the desert also. Nostradamus, says Pi. No clue why, but I love the idea of a small, possibly juvenile ice dragon. Well, it's tickling some fancy inside you, Kraken. Maybe the swamp has a huge poison, spitting axolotls. Yeah, they could be a nuisance even. Right? You want something, some fodder for your tutorial. Your level 1 or 2 PCs. Yeah, throw them at that, or even higher. You could base them on, I don't know, green dragons if they spit poison. The Great Nose. Oh, you said Nostradamus, not Nostradamus. Got it. Nostradamus. Aha. We're going to go to an excellent tool. All of you, if you don't have thesaurus.com and dictionary.com bookmarked or just memorized, do it. Nose. Beak. Snout. Adenoids. Bill. Horn. Muzzle. Nares. Nostrils. Proboscis. Schnoz. Sneezer. Sniffer. Snoot. Snuffer. Whiffer. Olfactory nerves, and smeller. So if you like an idea and you're like, how do I make it sound different? This is one way you can go about doing that. Heaven Eater for the pyramid, because it sucks in the clouds. So then, if you're focusing on that, I see the swamp being created by snot effluent from a buried deity. If it sneezes, the town gets destroyed. If we look at breathing, like sort of taking in the clouds and, the process of inhaling and exhaling, right? Because they inhale clouds and it exhales water in a way. Exhale, inhale, sigh, expire. Fan, gasp, gulp, insufflate, pant, puff, respire, scent, sniff, snore, snort, wheeze, draw in, open the floodgates, use lungs. The respire spire. The respiration restoration. That sounds like a good campaign name, honestly. Ooh, Spillheart, Heavensigh. I don't know, that one for some reason just struck a chord. For me, personally. Do any of you like Spillheart's suggestion? Or we could go with another one over here, too. Okay, so Zuler P likes it, but thinks that that's a good town name. Do you want to keep it as the pyramid name, or do you want to name the town Heavensigh? Oh, to sigh heavens. Since it's the pyramid that's doing the snuffling of the clouds. Something like that. Oh, you guys want to do the... you guys want to call the town that? That's fine, too. That's what Control X and Control V is for. Oh, so you think that it's actually a secret? So really the pyramid is just known as something like... is just the pyramid? That's its name? You can do that in fantasy naming conventions as well. Well, if we have that, then what would we like to call the desert that surrounds this area? Parchmouth? Could be something conventional. Because you have to imagine that the land is as dry as the air above as well. Oh, here's a... we don't have to use this, but if you're looking for... if you're looking for names, especially as a DM, and you like putting in little Easter eggs, what about this? What if this was called... what if this was called the Asp Desert? Now, as a player, you're like, oh, okay, you know, I get it. It sounds kind of fantasy, right? Oh, there's two vowels. Watch out. Our DM's getting a little frisky. Meanwhile, if you're the DM... oh, you want to use the Cyrillic letters? Or Cyrillic? Cyrillic. Yeah, I mean, you could use other languages as well to label things. Now, if you're the DM, do any of you get what AASB? If we call this... so you know that it's an acronym of some kind, right? Now, if I'm presenting this to you on a map as a player, this would just be the Asp Desert. Because there's a hidden Easter egg. Do any of you know what AASB would stand for? That could relate to this region and what we're talking about. First clue. So we have AASB. Ready? Anyone get it yet? Anyone get it after adding the first letters to each of the capitals? An amazing snoot boop. Wow. That's not what I had in mind, Dark Wolf, although that is an amazing contribution all the same. An amazing snoot boop. That's great. All right. The Kraken's dead. Anyone get the phrase yet? Sandsfire! Dark Wolf, can you give Sandsfire 50 experience points, please? The Asp Desert. No one, like, at some point in time, someone called it that for some reason, but everyone's just considered it, oh, it's just a colloquial phrase or it's a part of a language. You know, whatever. The halflings have a weird language. You know, maybe it's full of snakes and they meant to call it the Asp Desert. No, this is the Asb Desert. As above, so below. As above, the air is sucked dry of all moisture. So too below. The desert, every drop of water in the ground is pulled to this pyramid. Oh, you used to do stuff like that in school, Kraken. And you know what? Not everyone gets colloquial phrases like that, which can add to the fun and the mystery. So yes, this is the as above. I mean, if you don't have to keep it like this. This was more of a lesson in how you can name things as a DM and provide a little bit of mystery. And then when your players finally figure it out, you're like, hey, Lamau, you got it. So, yeah, like, we don't have to keep it as the Asb Desert, but we can. Or if nothing else, I accomplished what I wanted to, which is to give you a fun way to have a naming convention of something. Take a common phrase, something common sense, or, you know, sort of like not a folk tale, just like a phrase or a saying. Yeah, it could very well be a dragon inside there, Kraken. I don't want to poo-poo on that idea at all. You know, so too, I don't know, let's say that you create a desert that has no mirages, right? So load up this in your mind. It's a desert with no mirages, and I'm your DM, and I'm you're traipsing through it. And on your map, this is known. This desert with no mirages is known as Wizzywig Desert. Wizzywig. Can you figure that out as a player? I've described to you a desert with no mirages. And I've called it Wizzywig. I know you changed the spelling of it, Kraken. Though I do try and limit F-bombs and keep things PG-13 just because it makes for a more open conversation for people. I know you didn't like drop it hard or anything, but just as a newcomer, as a heads up, I'm not sore at you, I'm not upset. Hashtag just saying. Whoop, I'm sorry, this should be... There you go, Wizzywig. That's the Wizzywig. Yep. Well, yeah, you could do it that way. Otherwise, the phrase is "what you see is what you get." I messed up on that one, but Dark Wolf managed. So Dark Wolf, you can give yourself 50 experience points. And so you have a desert with no mirages, and yes, it has this weird fantasy name called WYSIWYG. Well, that's really just the phrase "what you see is what you get." Diadems, hey Maddie, is there a chart like what you used for the ruler of the settlement in 3.5? All of this can be used outside of 5th edition. This is generic world building, Diadems. It has fog mirages in effect for the humanoid forms in weird locale. Connecting that to what? Well, anyway, so yeah, we've discussed a lot of different options here, and I'm glad that you've enjoyed it.